Defining Star Wars is really difficult, but that's what some of the best content creators operating today have set about to do, and we're honoured to be part of an utterly amazing playlist dedicated to this very purpose. If you haven't seen anything else in the series, you'll find a link to the playlist in the video description below. If you found us because of the playlist and you like what we're doing, we'd really appreciate if you subscribe to the channel, or hit the like button, or even just left us a comment. So what defines Star Wars? Is it space wizards fighting good and evil with laser swords? Or is it giant space battles? Or is it a small family drama contrasted by lavish set pieces? Well, it's all of those things, but that's the tangible, obvious stuff. Star Wars defined is something else. To me, Star Wars is fluidity. What I mean by that is, by its very nature, meaning, structure, anything in Star Wars is completely open to change. I mean, hell, its name changed, its episode order changed, the order you're meant to watch the movies in changed. The scenes and the music and effects have all been changed. The entire story went from a simple coming-of-age tale to a full-blown Greek tragedy. And sure, all stories change, but mostly, character arcs are the things that we are attuned to as audience members. The big plot shifts come from the characters learning information in front of us and traversing their story. They appear, something happens, they answer a call, they falter, they rise to the occasion, they triumph, and we've been there on that journey with them. But what makes Star Wars so special, and what defines it in a way that you don't really see all that often in other franchises, is that it's not just the characters that change. It's the thematic pillars of the whole universe that have their own arcs. Their meanings evolve, recontextualize, and reframe as time goes on, and Star Wars as a franchise kind of requires participation from the audience. We're asked to process this updated information as new pieces of media are released, and the new media, in turn, forces us to go back and rethink what we understood about the past. After all, Star Wars is mythology. Like real life, all things in Star Wars can be kind of fluid, even the things that ground us and set the rules for how the story universe works. The Force is probably the biggest overarching structure in Star Wars. It underpins almost every action that takes place on screen, but we didn't always see it the way we do now. Our original interpretation of it was rudimentary at best. It didn't have much of an explanation, but was, in cinematic terms, a power. Something someone could tap into and win the day.
You don't need to see his identification.
We don't need to see his identification.
Use the Force, Luke. Let go, Luke.
Later, that power is elaborated into something more mystical.
And the powerful it is.
More connected to life itself.
Life creates it. Makes it grow. Its energy surrounds us and binds us. A Jedi uses the Force for knowledge and defense, never for attack.
And we're taught that it's not a superpower.
Is the dark side stronger?
No. But easier, more seductive.
The definition of the light and dark sides of the Force became, yes, a bit clearer, but it's still almost like a character that we never really see.
I've been wondering, what are midichlorians?
The prequels both dispel the mysticism and enforce it. Simultaneously, it's definable by science, linked to microscopic organisms in your blood that determine how strongly you can manipulate it.
They live inside me.
But also, it's a voice, and it can be listened to. And it's not until the prequels that we really understand that the Force has its own will.
They continually speak to us, telling us the will of the Force.
Be mindful of the living Force, young Padawan. You refer to the prophecy of the one who will bring balance to the Force.
It requires balance.
You believe it's this boy?
It's even got its own foretold prophecies, and they have galactic ramifications.
It was said that you would destroy the Sith, not join them! Bring balance to the Force, not leave it in darkness!
But we still see it as good and bad. We are told by the films to frame this as light must triumph over dark, and then balance can be achieved. Good must defeat evil. But it's not that simple.
Darkness rises and light to meet it.
Balance. Powerful light, powerful darkness.
Now we understand that the Force corrects itself.
My young apprentice, that as he grew stronger, his equal in the light would rise.
It's no longer just a tool for our protagonists and villains to tap into.
What do you know about the Force?
It's a power that Jedi have that lets them control people and make things float.
Impressive. Every word in that sentence was wrong. The Force is not a power you have. It's not about lifting rocks. It's the energy between all things, the tension,
Life, death and decay that feeds new life. Warmth, cold, peace, violence.
And between it all,
Balance.
balance that binds the universe together.
The Force is equally light and dark. Neither is more important than the other, and the first Jedi knew this. And now, so do we. The first time we meet the Jedi, our heroes in the franchise, knights of justice and keepers of all that is good and the light, they are one half in a very black and white picture. And they act as proxies for the Force and cement that this is just a simple story about good fighting evil. But the prequels teach us that every action leading to the Empire's rise came about because the good guys strayed from their code of ethics, straying from the will of the Force. It's this move away from being peacekeepers and into war generals that corrupts them and weakens them.
For over 1,000 generations, the Jedi Knights were the guardians of peace and justice in the Old Republic.
Anakin, my allegiance is to the Republic, to democracy!
The mystique and heroism of these characters of myth and lore is dismantled and reframed in front of us, eroded as time moves forward.
Now that they're extinct, the Jedi are romanticized, deified.
The conclusion reached by our first hero, Luke Skywalker, is that the Jedi were
Strip away
wrong.
the myth and look at their deeds. The legacy of the Jedi is failure, hypocrisy, hubris. And this is the lesson. That Force does not belong to the Jedi. To say that if the Jedi die, the light dies is vanity. Can you feel that?
Like us, his original understanding of the Force and the Jedi changed.
At the height of their powers, they allowed Darth Sidious to rise, create the Empire, and wipe them out.
It was a Jedi Master who was responsible for the training and creation of Darth Vader.
Despite his and their best intentions, they were responsible for terrible things. By the end of The Last Jedi, Luke plays out the central thesis of the film.
The greatest teacher failure is.
That the only way forward for Luke and the galaxy is to learn from failure. We understand the Force differently now, and we understand the Jedi differently too. We understand their place in all of this, and so does Luke. But Luke has a clear path to follow. But how do we reconcile all that we have learned? How do we move forward, knowing everything that we now do? What does Star Wars change for us that will allow us to come to terms with that legacy and to accept the failures of the past and accept the mistakes and to accept that history doesn't need to hold us back?
I don't like sand. It's coarse and rough and irritating.
For the Skywalkers, the desert is a place of sorrow. The sand is the home of Anakin's slavery. It's barren, desolate,
And it gets everywhere.
and forever linked with the death of his mother. In the sand is where the Jedi abandoned her. For Luke, it represents his own kind of servitude, but to his family. In a similar way to his father, the desert is where his parental figures met their tragic end. For Rey, her parents are already gone, and like Anakin, the desert is a place of abandonment. It makes her a slave to the memories of her family.
You already know the truth. Whomever you're waiting for on Jakku, they're never coming back.
Through the sequel trilogy, we follow Rey as she too learns what we have learned about the past.
The Jedi were real.
Magical power holding together good and evil, the dark side and the light. Crazy thing is, it's true. The Force, the Jedi, all of it.
And we go through the dismantling of those legends with her. Rey is the vessel through which we can finally process all that has happened over all of this time. And we get to do it through one final act of change, one last shift in the template of Star Wars. And we do it by going back to where it all began. As the epilogue to the Rise of Skywalker commences and the Skywalker saga concludes, Rey returning to Tatooine, putting the Skywalker lightsabers to rest here, signals not just an end to the saga, the story we grew up with, but also finding peace with the story itself. When we meet Luke, staying on Tatooine is akin to being shackled. Looking out to the sunset, Luke's dreams seem forever away and unreachable. But for Rey, she's no longer bound by legacy. The twin suns bloom large in the final shot of Episode 9. It signals a new normal, a new journey for Rey, who has recently overcome her own demons of the past. For all intents and purposes, the desert is the legacy of Star Wars, and making peace with it, a place of so much sorrow and so much pain, that final change, that one last fluid piece of meaning, flipping the desert paradigm on its head, brings Rey's dreams, her future, and our future within reach. From here, where it all began, we and Star Wars can finally move forward.
Ooh, that took longer than I thought it would. Probably about 2 weeks longer. So thanks for watching it. It's probably a good time to point out that this video, even though it does bring up the Rise of Skywalker, is in no way intended to be a comment on the quality of it, or whether it's good or not, or any of that stuff, just the themes. We'll talk about that stuff in... Actually, we've already spoken about it. I think we've put that to bed. That's done. You can go watch our reaction videos if you're interested. So anyway, hope you enjoyed, and I want to say thank you to all of our patrons. If you like what we do, please consider joining Patreon and chipping in. Every dollar helps. It really does help keep the channel afloat. And I want to give an extra special thanks to Bailey from Loverboy Media for getting us involved in this project. Yeah, he gave us a very good video. He gave us all a very good video about The Last Jedi, and that actually kicked our motivation into gear, and yeah, had a chat with him, and here we are. So thanks, Bailey. Thanks to everyone else, and yeah, we'll see you soon.